it's Katie, and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today I'm doing my January wrap-up where I will be telling you guys all of the books that I read this month and my thoughts on all of the books basically. I started this month with a January TBR and surprisingly read most of the books on that list, which I'm really happy about because it was my first time doing a TBR video and making a TBR in general, so I wasn't sure how well I would stick to that, but I honestly did pretty well, and it helped that I read so many books this month. I ended up reading 15 books, which is crazy. That's basically a book like every other day, and I don't know how. I feel like this month just felt like it went on forever, so it kind of felt like a lot of time to read, and since it's cold outside, I don't really have much else to do. So I read a lot this month, which I was really happy about. And I also kept track of how many pages I read, and I read about 5,000 pages this month, which sounds like so much. I'm very happy with that. Okay, so the very first book I read in 2021 was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and this is like a magical King Arthur retelling. It follows Bree, who after her mother dies, she goes to this, it's kind of like an early college program for high schoolers where she gets to live on campus with them. And on her first night there, she witnesses this magical attack. And so a member of this secret society on campus tries to wipe it from her memory, but it ends up triggering some hidden magical powers that she didn't know that she had. And she meets Nic, who was an exiled member of this secret society, and they end up teaming up together for her to kind of infiltrate this society. And on that journey, she ends up finding out that there was more to her mother's death than what was in the police report, which is such a cool twist. And you also get to see a lot of the King Arthur retelling throughout this novel. It's like very prominent. It's a huge part of everything, which was one of my favorite elements. There are a lot of tones of grief and loyalty all mixed into this really cool magic system, which I loved. And you also get to meet Sel, who is one of the members of the secret society, and he is actually the one who tries to wipe her memory when she witnesses that attack. And he's one of my favorite characters because he has a lot of character development throughout the book, which I loved witnessing. And I'm not sure if he's actually Bree's love interest, but he's who I like to ship her with. So definitely hoping that they are endgame because this is part of a series. It's not just a standalone. So I'm not sure when book 2 is coming out, but I'm really hoping it's sometime this year because even though this was the first book I read, I knew right away that this is one that would stick with me for all of 2021. Next, we have The Girl with the Pirate Smile by Joseph Truitt. And I actually have a full review for this book that I did earlier this month, so I will try to link it either here or down in the description. We will see what happens. But basically, this is a Christmas mystery novel about this little girl named Emma, and she ends up finding a new friend named Penelope who convinces her to break in to the old cookie factory in town. And they create this plan to restart the factory and bake cookies for everyone that they know in town. And along this journey, all these mysterious things start happening around Penelope, and it makes Emma start to question the reality of her new friend. And this is such a fun adventure read that has something for everybody, like people of all ages, because of course it's like this super cute story about two little girls and a cookie factory, but there's also a lot of mystery to it, and there's also some deeper tones and deeper subject matter than what you would think by the synopsis. So there's definitely something for people of all ages to connect to. The next few books I read are actually ebooks, so I don't have anything physical to show you guys. But the first one is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. And this is one that I finally got a chance to pick up because I think they're on Volume 4 now, maybe. I know there's 3 out for sure. There might be a volume 4 coming out this year. I can't remember, but I'm definitely really far behind. But anyway, this one takes place at a British all-boys school, and on one hand, we have Charlie, who is an openly gay, high-strung overthinker, and on the other hand, we have Nic, who is a sweetheart rugby player, and they become friends very quickly, and before he knows it, Charlie starts to have a lot of feelings for Nic, even though he thinks that he doesn't have a chance with him. And it is so sweet to watch their relationship blossom, even though it like starts as a friendship and then they start to have feelings for each other. It is just so sweet. That's like the one word that I kept thinking as I was reading it. It's super cute and adorable, and I really ship them together. And the illustration style is amazing. It was so fun to look at all of these things. But the end of this book has a huge cliffhanger, and I did not think the book ended right then and there. Like, I really thought there were more pages, and I honestly feel kind of betrayed that like that was the end of volume 1. And I know it's supposed to get you like hyped up for the future volumes, and it totally does. I need to get my hands on volume 2, but I was just so upset that it ended right then. Like, I wanted a little bit more just to like hold me over till I get volume 2. Next, I read 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston, and I loved this one so much. It takes place over Christmas time, so it does have some Christmassy elements, but it's not necessarily a Christmas read. I think you can definitely read it at any time, but it follows Sophie, who her parents end up going on a trip, I think to see her sister or something over break, but she convinces them to let her stay home, and she wants to go hang out with her boyfriend, but when she gets there, she overhears him saying that he wants a break from her, so she breaks up with him and goes to see her large family over at her grandparents' house, and basically everybody else in her family's over there. It's like a huge family gathering, which was so fun to meet all these characters. But when she gets there, they all hear what happened, and so her grandma comes up with this idea to set her up on 10 blind dates. And they all rush up to this dry erase board and write their name on a day, and they get to pick whoever they want to set her up on a date with and plan out the whole thing, basically. So they are 10 very different dates, very different experiences, but all so funny and so entertaining and relatable. And it's just such a fun read. It like kind of reminds me of like The Bachelor or Bachelorette. I don't watch that show, but I feel like this is what I would imagine it to be like. But honestly, it was just so well done. It was such like an easy breezy read, but it was such a feel-good read too. Like, I just was so happy reading it. I was having such a good time. So if you need a book that's like a good pick-me-up, I definitely recommend this one. And I feel like this could be a Netflix show or a movie or something like that. It'd be such a cute rom-com. So I definitely hope something like that happens in the future, because it still brings a smile to my face. It's just such a good book. After that, I read Roman and Jewel by Dana L. Davis, and this is basically a Hamilton-esque Romeo and Juliet retelling, which was super fun, and it follows Jersey, who wants to be a lead on Broadway more than anything, and so she auditions for Roman and Jewel, and she basically gets the role of the understudy because the producers of the show decide that they want a celebrity to be the main role instead. And then all of a sudden, this video of Jersey and the male lead who plays Roman in the show goes viral, and all the fans start to weigh in on how Jersey should be the lead instead of the celebrity. And so obviously this causes a lot of controversy, and it tests a lot of friendships and the professionalism of the people in the show, and so many other things. And this honestly was a pretty great read. I mean, there was a lot of musical knowledge and little tidbits that you got through conversations between characters, and just with the whole being involved in behind the scenes of a Broadway show. So that was really fun to see. And I thought Zeppelin that's who plays Roman in the show. So he's our male lead. I thought Zeppelin and Jersey had a good amount of chemistry together, so that was really nice to see. And they also had a good amount of like endearing awkwardness, which was good to see too. It wasn't like they were just these like super cool like people. They definitely seemed more humble and down to earth and relatable because there were some awkward moments. And this book also surprised me because it wasn't just like a super fun behind the scenes of a musical. You also had a lot of diversity in the characters and also in the subject matter. It dealt with a lot of grief, and it also mentions suicide. So if that's a trigger for you, be aware of that before reading this. But I enjoyed that it had a lot of depth to the story as well, and it wasn't just this cute romance and a fun musical. The next one I read was The Master of One by Jaida Jones and Dani Bennett. And this follows Rags, who's a thief, and his last little attempt to steal things goes haywire, and the royal sorcerer Morian the Last ends up not kidnapping him, but basically capturing him, I guess, and forcing him to help him capture these 6 ancient relics. And Rags plans on finding a way out of this until he learns that the ancient relics are actually 6 people. And this deals with fae and also a male-male romance. So the synopsis sounded amazing, which is why I picked it up. It has so many cool elements to it, and it's just such a cool concept. And also I loved the way the ancient relics were done. Even though they're people, I know it sounds weird to call them relics, but that whole aspect of this book was so well written and definitely probably my favorite part. But I did have a hard time getting into this because it was such a long quest, which is not something I usually enjoy. And for some reason, I just couldn't connect to it. A big part of that is because it's told from, I think, 4 different perspectives, which is a lot for me. The most I've ever read was 3 different perspectives. And for some reason, it just seemed like, since they were pretty short chapters, we just jumped back and forth between characters a lot, and I never could fully connect to any of them, so it made it a lot harder for me to enjoy the story. And I was really excited for the male-male romance in here, but I honestly didn't see a lot of chemistry between the characters. It's like I knew that they were love interests, but for some reason I just couldn't see any, like I said, any chemistry between them. And I don't know if it's because I already wasn't connected to the book, so I just kind of was just trying to get through it, and I didn't experience it the way I should have been. But I don't know, I didn't really see their romance until like the very end of the book. Then it definitely started to show, but it took a while for me to kind of get that on my own. And I think a lot of the reason why I was kind of disappointed in this is because I went in with pretty high expectations, and usually that means I'm disappointed in books. So I really feel like I need to stop going in with such high expectations. But I think this is still a very good book. I feel like if you like quests in books and anything involving fae, I feel like you should definitely still give this a chance. I think my expectations were just too high. This next book is definitely my favorite one I read this month, and one of my favorite books I've read like my whole life probably, which is a bold statement, but I think it's pretty true. And this book is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. And I also did a full review on this earlier in the month. So again, I will try to link it either up here or down below in the description. We'll see what happens. But Kingdom of the Wicked follows twin witches, Amelia and Victoria, and they live in secret among humans because they want to avoid persecution, obviously. But one day Victoria doesn't show up for their family dinner, and so Amelia goes out searching for her and finds her mutilated body. And this kind of thrusts her on this path of revenge for her sister, and she needs to find out who murdered her in order to get this revenge that she wants and get vengeance. And on her journey for vengeance, she meets Wrath, who is one of the wicked princes of hell, and her sister had always been warned against the princes of hell from childhood. And even though he claims to be on her side and to also want to find out who murdered her sister for his own reasons, she's not sure if she's able to trust him. Kerri Maniscalco's writing is amazing. This takes place in 19th century Italy, and it's just so vivid. It feels like you time travel and you're experiencing this time with the characters. It's so well written. I love it so much, and the characters are amazing. I loved meeting Wrath, and the whole concept of the 7 wicked princes of hell and the fact that they match the 7 deadly sins is so cool to me. It was so well done, and Amelia is such a strong heroine, and she goes through so much character development throughout the story, and her and Wrath's relationship is just so passionate. They hate each other at first, and then they learn to kind of work together, and just their whole relationship is just passionate. Every emotion they feel is just fueled and passionate, and there's some angst, and it's just amazing. I still am obsessed with this book, and I read it a few weeks ago. I highly recommend it. The second book is coming out later this year, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. So I definitely think you guys should read this one before that comes out, and maybe we can all talk about it together, because I really cannot stop talking about this one. Next, I read Jackpot by Nic Stone, and this one follows Rico, who's juggling her senior year, taking care of her little brother at home and working at the local gas station. And during one of her shifts at the gas station, she ends up selling the jackpot winning ticket. And nobody ends up coming to claim the prize, so she takes it upon herself to team up with one of the popular kids at school to track down the winner. And that's essentially all I knew going into this book. And it's definitely a good read. I feel like this one was pretty average for me. There were things that I really liked and some things that bothered me, but overall I think it was a pretty good read. It dealt with the poor versus rich trope. I don't know if that's a trope, but that's how it processes in my head. But typically I feel like this is pretty cliche, but I feel like it was pretty well done in this book, so that was pretty good. I don't know. I feel like I read so many books this month that this one just doesn't really stand out to me. It didn't really hit that hard while I was reading it, and I don't really remember a lot of my thoughts about it. But like I said, I think it was a pretty average read, a pretty average romance. My next read was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. And this follows Jude, who was 7 when her parents were murdered. And her and her 2 sisters were taken away to live in the High Court of Fairy. I think that's what it's called. But basically, they were taken away to live there. And this takes place 10 years later, where all Jude wants still to this day is to just feel like she belongs. Because Fae hate humans more than anything else. They make them feel like they don't belong there, and the person who hates humans the most is Prince Carden. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he's the one who hates them the most. And in order to feel like she belongs, Jude wants to earn her place in the court, and to do that, she needs to defy the prince and face the consequences. And this book honestly had very dark vibes, which surprised me. I feel like I should have known better, but the only other Holly Black book that I've read is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, which that one also had very dark vibes, so I don't know why I was expecting anything different, but that was definitely a fun element to it. I feel like it definitely fit the wintry vibe that's happening while I was reading this, so I enjoyed that. But I honestly spent a lot of time hating some of the characters, which I think was intentional because there was like a lot of bullying in this book. Like, they were very mean to Jude, and so I really didn't like a lot of the characters that were doing that, but you know, could be really great writing because that was probably the point. But one of the main characters I hated at first was Prince Carden. I really don't know how you say his name. If I'm saying it wrong, please correct me because I feel like this is such a popular series. It's one of those things where you like say the name so many times in your head and then you go to say it out loud and you're like, I don't know, is this how you pronounce it? You really start to question yourself. But anyway, he is the person that I probably hated the most at the beginning, but he went through so much character growth throughout the book, and he honestly is probably my favorite character just because of all of the things that you learn about him and how much he changes throughout the book. He definitely was really fun to read about. But overall, I didn't really love this as much as I feel like I should have, just because it's such a hyped up series, and honestly it probably gets better in the other books, and I do still plan to continue the series, but there's something that I couldn't quite connect to. But the last few chapters of this book were amazing, and that alone is a good enough reason for people to read this. I definitely want to continue the series because I feel like there are so many cliffhangers and it left off in such like a pivotal point that it's definitely worth reading the rest of the series. So next is the only audiobook that I listened to this month, and that is You'd Be Mine by Erin Hahn. And this follows Annie Mathers, who is America's sweetheart and the daughter of country legends. But she is trying to keep her distance from the music industry after her parents' death. And on the other hand, it follows Clay, who is one of the biggest names in country music and also kind of a bad boy in the eyes of the media. And in order to save his summer tour, his label has told him that he needs to convince Annie to be the summer tour opener. And so he goes all the way to Michigan to convince her to join the tour. And once she says yes, all of their fans start to ship the two of them together, which is the last thing that Annie wants after witnessing her parents' volatile marriage in the spotlight. And I expected this to just be a really cute, like, summery romance with a bunch of musical elements to it, which it did have a lot of that, but it honestly was a lot deeper than I was expecting because both of our main characters are grieving in their own ways, and they are starting to heal through their music and also through each other, which was so fun to read about, and it was honestly a lot more meaningful than I was anticipating, which was such a nice surprise. And another thing I really loved from this book was the friendships. Annie's best friends, I think it was her best friend and her cousin who are also in her band, they go on tour with her and they are so supportive and such great friends. And then Clay's friend, who is also a part of his musical act, he is also such a great friend to him. So friendship was a very strong theme throughout this audiobook, and it's just always great when you have some really great supporting characters to help move the story along too. After that, I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling that takes place in 1920 Shanghai and also involves some monsters in it as well. This book follows a blood feud between rival gangs, and at the core of this feud, we have Juliet, who is the heir to the Scarlet Gang, and we also have Roma, who is the heir to the White Flowers, and who was also Juliet's first love until he betrayed her. But all of a sudden, members of both of these gangs start clawing out their own throats, and whispers of monsters lurking in the shadows start to go around town, and so the two of them have to set aside their feud and their past to make sure that there is a future for both of the gangs to even fight for. I really enjoyed all of the action elements in here and the way the monsters and the mystery of figuring out why it was happening and who was doing it and all of that stuff. That was probably my favorite part of this book, which surprised me because since it was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, I expected the romance to be my favorite part. But honestly, the way the monsters and that whole thing was written was done so well that it kind of stole the spotlight for me. And the summary of this book literally combines so many elements that I love. Like, it just checks off all of those boxes. But there was a little something missing for me. I'm not sure why. It just didn't hit as hard as I was hoping. Like, I wanted it to hit as hard as Kingdom of the Wicked did for me, and it was lacking just a little bit, but it was still a really great book and such a cool concept, and it has a plot twist at the end, which I like need to know what happens. So I am not sure when the sequel comes out, but I definitely plan to read that one as well. So I still highly recommend this to you guys. It's such a cool concept. It's so well written, and it's so fun to time travel to the 1920s in Shanghai. Next, I read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and the main reason I wanted to start this series is because it is coming to Netflix, I think in April, so I'm really hoping to finish this whole series before the show comes out because I like to read the books before I watch a movie or a show based on a book. I just feel like that's probably the right way to go about it, so that's why I wanted to read this one this month and kind of get a head start. Plus, I've heard amazing things about Leigh Bardugo. But Shadow and Bone follows Alina, who is an orphan and also a soldier, and she knows that she might not even survive the first trek across the Shadowfold, which is basically this expanse of darkness crawling with monsters. And on this journey across the Shadowfold, her regiment is attacked, and she ends up unleashing this power that she didn't know that she had. And so she gets sent to train with the Grisha, who is her country's military elite, and she ends up falling under the spell of the Darkling, who believes that her power is strong enough to defeat the Shadowfold and unite the war-raging country. And throughout her training, she ends up unlocking a secret from her past and also making a pretty dangerous discovery. This one was a very slow start for me, but the second half of the book really picked up and I ended up really enjoying it. And I think the Darkling is probably my favorite character, mostly because he is so well written. Like, I could not decide whether or not I liked him as a character or not. I feel like there were so many developments throughout the book that kept changing my mind and my perspective, which was so amazing because that's not something you get from a lot of books. So it was really fun. And this is a really cool concept and a world that Leigh Bardugo has built. So I'm very excited to continue the rest of the series and then to watch the show in April. The next one I read was an ebook, and that is Chlorine Sky by Mahogany Browne. And this is a coming-of-age story told in verse that deals with things like broken promises, growing apart from a friend, and also some bullying and how quick rumors can spread, if that made sense. Sometimes I don't know if I speak English. But this was beautifully written, and there's so many great quotes that are things to live by and also very relatable. And Mahogany Browne covers basically every element of growing up, and she does it so masterfully. And she also manages to add some social commentary on things like race and lower class, bullying, and rape, and all of these really important topics as well. And it's definitely a read that I think is fit for people of all ages. I think everybody can find something to relate to, and it's just such a great story. There were some loose ends that I wish were kind of wrapped up a little better at the end, but I feel like all the important parts were covered, and it is a pretty quick read, so definitely go ahead and give this one a shot. I think it just came out this month, so I definitely haven't seen a lot of people talking about it, but you should definitely go read it. My next read was Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno, and this follows Georgina and Mary, who are twin sisters, and they are a part of this family where magic has been passed down through every generation to the women, and they all get their powers by their 18th birthday. And her sister Mary has always had this power to defy gravity since she was little, but Georgina still does not have her power, and she's turning 18 at the end of the summer, and she's worried that if her power doesn't come soon, she might not have any magic at all. And this takes place on a really small island where weird things have always kind of happened. It sometimes snows in the summer, and there's also this 300-year-old bird that comes to the island every summer to hatch all these eggs, and it's kind of a big like festival for it, and all these tourists come to see it. It's this big thing for the island. It's kind of like their claim to fame. But this summer, tragedy strikes, and it makes people on the island look toward this family with some suspicion. And I'm honestly surprised that I haven't heard more people talking about this book, because I think it came out in 2018, so it's been out for a while, but it is so whimsical and magical and also kind of haunting at the same time, but it's such a fun vibe to experience throughout the whole story. And there's also a very sweet female-female romance in here, so I loved that element because there's some great LGBTQ plus representation in this story. There's also another character aside from the main couple that is also part of that community, so it just had really great representation, and I just really enjoyed this read. I can't really explain like everything that happened in here because there were some really weird parts, but there's just something very captivating about the way it was written, and it has like a full circle ending, which I loved, so that was kind of cool. And there's also a content warning for rape and sexual assault in here. It is a small part of the book, but definitely a very meaningful part, so be aware of that before you dive into this one. But I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised when I found this one at my library and decided to pick it up. And the very last book that I read this month was Strange Planet by Nathan W. Pyle. And this is a graphic novel that basically follows aliens through all the stages of life, and there's a lot of commentary on things that aren't so different from the way that we live. So it's so funny. Like, I probably laughed the whole time I read this, and it is like the perfect coffee table book. I got this one from the library, and I'm honestly kind of sad I don't own it already, but I definitely plan to pick it up. I've seen it for so long in like Target and Walmart, and I've been wanting to pick it up for a while, and it's just so funny. If you ever need like a laugh or a pick-me-up, I definitely recommend you grabbing this one. It was probably the best part of my day when I read it. It just made me so happy. I kept interrupting my fiance with whatever he was doing because I wanted to show him all my favorite parts, which was basically every single page. There were so many things I wanted to share with him. And the characters in this book have a very unique way of describing things, which is hilarious. An umbrella is a sky shield, a fridge is a sustenance preserver, balloons are elastic breath traps, like just so many things like that. And I mean, they're not wrong. The way they describe things, it's true. They're very realistic and relatable, and just, I could not stop laughing. So I love this so much. I need to get my own copy. It's so good. The illustrations are really cute too. So it was just a great way to end my January. It was great to like wrap it up with something so short and sweet and funny. All right, so those are all of the books that I read in January of 2021. I still can't believe I read 15 books. That's so crazy to me. Please let me know below how many books you read this month. And also, I would love some ideas for what you guys would like to see in February videos. I have some pretty fun ideas, but I would love suggestions from you guys as well. So please comment that below. Also, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.